for. Now, we know going to be of high interest to not just Arsenal, but many, many clubs here and abroad. But how serious would you say interest is from Arsenal themselves?
I would say very serious. We know that Mikel Arteta is looking to strengthen down that left-hand side. We were talking earlier in the window about potentially some interest in Real Madrid star Rodrygo. We know that Arsenal have a list of targets, and we also understand that Eberechi Eze is one of those players that they are very much interested in at the moment. There's been no formal club-to-club contacts at this stage, but with 2 years left on his current Crystal Palace deal and a rumoured release clause, which we understand to be around £60 million with £8 million in add-ons, that makes a player of his calibre, quality, experience, know-how, particularly down that left-hand side. You've seen it in performances for England as well, of interest for a side like Arsenal. We also know that Tottenham are also interested in Eze as well. Imagine that, two of the North London sides going toe-to-toe for someone of his quality. So, yeah, this is going to be one to watch, one to keep an eye on. He's got 2 years left on his current deal. And normally you get to that point where you either sign a new contract or the club sells you. And you get the feeling, with all the noise about Eze over the course of this summer, even at this early stage, he could be one of those players that makes a move.
Yeah, and you understand why. Such a high-quality player, creates chances, disrupts play for the opposition. But, James, why is that left wing position such an issue, or such a point of Mikel Arteta trying to replace what he's got at the moment? Is it that bad? Is he in that bad of a position?
Arsenal are constantly trying to strive to improve in every single area of the pitch. And when you look at what they've been getting on the left-hand side of the pitch, you can understand why they'd look to strengthen there. I think when you look at Arsenal from an attacking perspective, they were down 22 goals last season on the previous campaign, just 69 goals in total across the 38 Premier League matches. I think when you look at that left side in particular, and you look at Gabriel Martinelli in particular, I think it's fair to say they're not getting what they could be on that left-hand side of the pitch. When you look at that 22-23 season where Arsenal came very close to winning the Premier League title, you had Martinelli scoring 15 goals, you had goals from Nordgaard and Saka as well, which got Arsenal so close to winning the Premier League title. But when you look at the last 2 seasons, Martinelli has scored 14 goals across 2 seasons, less than he did in the previous campaign. And in terms of the assists, he's not necessarily producing those numbers as well. From a creative point of view, 575 minutes per assist in the Premier League last season. He's taking less shots from the left-hand side as he was in the previous campaigns. Yes, he shared minutes with the likes of Leandro Trossard and at times Raheem Sterling last season. I think it's fair to say Arsenal are still pleased with what Gabriel Martinelli has done for Arsenal. He's still just 24 years of age. He's still a player who has yet to reach his peak. But you can understand, as Arsenal look to try and get closer and closer to winning a Premier League title and winning major silverware, that is an area of the pitch where they think maybe they can get slightly more than they are right now. Without saying it's over for Martinelli, they're looking at their options. Yeah,
they want elite level, I suppose they would say. But Martin Zubimendi, another player that's been linked with Arsenal, Mark, coming from Real Sociedad. How close is that to being announced?
So close.
We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, I know. It's quite funny. There's a joke going around that Arsenal have signed Zubimendi in January, April, May, June, and probably in July. Yeah, we know that Arsenal are paying the £51 million release clause. We reported earlier this week that Martin Zubimendi had been in London to meet the Arsenal officials and just finalise those details within that contract. We're expecting it to be official next week. We know that he is going to be in London for the pre-season campaign, and he'll be amongst that Arsenal squad that's travelling to Singapore and Hong Kong as well for pre-season activity. So no questions, no concerns, no worries. He will be a member of Mikel Arteta's squad for next season. It's just a case of finalising that details and then it will be announced at some stage next week, probably because the new football financial year starts on the 1st of July and they'll make sure they get the deals done in next year's accounts as opposed to this year's. It's a simple accounting exercise, really.
OK, so it's a business
you
issue
would imagine
that's
so
holding
at this
things
stage.
up.
Yeah.
Kepa has also been mentioned. There's been Nordgaard that's mentioned. What's happening to these players? Why has Arsenal not signed any of them?
Well, there's lots of things being tied up right now. We're expecting a formal announcement of Kepa moving from Chelsea to Arsenal over the course of the next few days, possibly even next week. He's completed his medical. There's an agreement in principle when it comes to personal terms. Arsenal triggering that £5 million release clause in his contract. A great bit of business. Arsenal see that as someone
That's a bargain,
somebody to
considering how much he
compete
was
with
bought for.
David Raya, somebody who Chelsea bought for around £70 million a few years ago. So that feels like a really good bit of business. Once again, striving to get the very best out of every single department. The goalkeeper department there. Also at the same time, Christian Nordgaard, that deal is very close. It's a £10 million deal that's been agreed. Could rise to £15 million in terms of add-ons. There's still a little bit of work to be done with that deal, but everything is pointing towards a fairly swift conclusion, and that comes amid the situation with Thomas Partey. I think at this stage, it's fair to say he's unlikely to stay at Arsenal. Talks have been ongoing around a new contract, but it looks like he's set to depart. So Arsenal have acted very quickly in bringing in Christian Nordgaard, the captain of Brentford. Then at the same time, so those are two deals which you'd think are very close to being confirmed. At the same time, they're also working on signing a centre-back in the form of Christian Mosquera from Valencia. He's got 1 year left on his contract. 20 years of age, he's a right-sided centre-back. It's an area of the pitch that Arsenal have been looking at for a period of time to try and strengthen in depth. They've got plenty of defenders. Arsenal, they're constantly looking to improve in that area of the pitch. He's someone they've looked at for a long period of time, around two or 3 years. Just 20 years of age, so probably more one for the future. But look back when they signed Saliba all those years back, and look what he's like now. And that's the hope. If they do sign him, he'll be someone as good as that.
Kepa, he's going to Arsenal to be a number 2. Does that sound like something that Kepa would want?
Well, I think he'll be pleased with how he performed at Bournemouth last season. I think it's fair to say he didn't have an incredible season, but we got to see the sort of player that Chelsea had, the sort of player that Real Madrid signed on loan a season or two ago. And you never quite know what's going to happen in football, do you? Kepa is a brilliant goalkeeper. David Raya has been a revelation in an Arsenal shirt. There were conversations 2 years back when Aaron Ramsdale was the Arsenal #1 and people questioned why on earth do you need to sign David Raya, because Aaron Ramsdale had a really good season, but he's just taken that jersey another step forward when you consider his show reel from last season, the important saves he made last year. I think Arsenal defensively, because of the red cards and the injuries, weren't quite as tight at the back as in previous years. In previous years, they've been incredible in terms of the clean sheets. But I think Kepa's aware of what his situation will be. Last season, Arsenal had Neto on loan, and he only played once, I think, in the Carabao Cup. I think with a player like Kepa, with his credentials, maybe you expect to see him more than Neto last season. We may see him in the domestic cups, potentially in Champions League matches if Arsenal have sealed their progression to the next spot as well. So I think it's a really, really good bit of business for Arsenal. £5 million.
OK, so Mark, we've spoken about a goalkeeper for Arsenal, potential defensive midfielder, attacking midfielder.
I know where this is going.
I heard a rumour that Arsenal were looking for a striker, and I've been hearing that rumour for quite a while. Where are the strikers in Arsenal's radar at the moment?
They're coming. They're coming.
Are they?
But yeah, this is where Arsenal fans will be sat at home tonight watching the show. They'll be sat in the pub. They'll be sat around over the course of the weekend chatting with their mates saying, this is great. Yeah, Zubimendi, fantastic. New goalkeeper back up to Raya. Yeah, lovely jubbly. Possibly someone down the left-hand side, because that's how they talk, lovely jubbly. And they'll also be saying, we don't care about that, because the one player that we want, the one position we need to strengthen, if you spoke to 100 Arsenal fans, if you spoke to 1,000 Arsenal fans and said, you can only sign one position this summer, what will it be? Where should it be? What would you like it to be? 100 out of 100 or 1,000 out of 1,000 would say, it's a number 9, it's a striker. Now, I think Arsenal will get a striker. I don't think there's any question they will get a striker. The way you look at their activity and what they've done so far, they've obviously got a couple of the gaps they need to fill in midfield, with it looks like being an impending departure for Thomas Partey. They needed to find a backup goalkeeper or a goalkeeper that can challenge David Raya. So they've just slotted in those jigsaw pieces. That one final key jigsaw piece is a number 9. We know they're interested in Benjamin Sesko. We know they're also interested in Victor Gyökeres.
But multiple teams are interested in those two.
Exactly. So that's where they can't hang around.
Yeah.
They're going to have to get this business done. But when you look at Arsenal, financially, they've been very sound and they're very astute and clever with what they do. However, this next piece of business, if it's a left-sided player or certainly a number 9, is going to be the biggest spend of the summer. It's likely to be a package of 60, 70 or 80 million, depending on who they go and get. The wages are going to be, reflective of the transfer fee. The agency fee will be reflective of the transfer fee. It'll be a big deal to make happen. So therefore, they're maybe just slotting in those smaller pieces that aren't quite as expensive, and then they'll be left with, right, this is our pot to go and get a number 9, and we know what we can afford and we know what we're going to go and get. So I would say, Arsenal fans, as frustrating as it is, be patient. It will come, but not just yet.
And we've still got 7 weeks left until the start of the Premier League season. Arsenal not back in pre-season yet. Arsenal, Mikel Arteta spoke to me before the end of the season. They're aware it's a priority. It's a clear identity. They need to find a striker in this transfer window. They've looked over the course of the last two transfer windows. It's not quite been right. There was that interest in Sesko in January, but there was an agreement,